I didn't sleep that morning, or the next night. Cedar Falls wakes up early, whether you want it to or not. Around 6, the sound of pickup trucks and delivery vans started leaking through the walls of my house. I lay on my couch fully dressed, staring at the ceiling fan as it clicked unevenly. Counting rotations like that might steady something inside me. My phone buzzed again. Lena, please talk to me. 5 minutes later, it's not what it looked like. Another 10, I made a mistake. I swear. I turned the phone face down. What it looked like was her mouth on someone else's. What it felt like was humiliation so thick I could taste it. Around 9, there was a knock on my door. I already knew who it was. In a town this small, news travels faster than apologies. It was Evan Brooks, my best friend since high school. He didn't say anything when I opened the door. He just looked at me for a long second and nodded, like he was confirming something he'd already suspected. So, he said finally, "You saw them." That was all it took. I sat back down on the couch, and for the first time since the parking lot, I let myself feel it. The anger, the embarrassment, the way every memory with her suddenly felt contaminated. Evan told me what I hadn't known yet. The man's name was Derek Collins. 32, recently divorced, worked in regional sales, in town just long enough to feel new, not long enough to feel accountable. Apparently, Lena and Derek hadn't been as careful as they thought. Someone had seen them at O'Malley's bar the week before. Someone else had seen Derek's truck outside her apartment late at night. The grocery store kiss wasn't the beginning. It was just the first time I'd been there to witness it. I laughed at that. A short, hollow sound that didn't feel like it belonged to me. By noon, I couldn't stay inside anymore. I drove into town, parked where everyone could see my truck, and walked into Miller's grocery like nothing had happened. It felt important to be seen, to not disappear. That's when I felt it. The looks. Not pity. Not sympathy. Curiosity. People whispered badly in Cedar Falls. Too polite to stare. Too interested not to talk. I realized then that Lena's betrayal wasn't just hers anymore. It was mine. I was the guy who got cheated on. That label sticks. I left without buying anything and drove to the river instead. There's a bench there where I used to sit with Lena in the evenings. I sat alone, watching the water move like it had no memory of anything that passed through it. That's when my phone rang again. I almost didn't answer, but I did. It wasn't Lena. It was a number I didn't recognize. The voice on the other end was calm. Female. Slightly amused, like she already knew how this conversation would go. "Hi," she said. "You don't know me, but I think we should talk. Not about her. About you." I asked who she was. There was a brief pause. "My name is Marianne Hale," she said. "And if you don't want this town to eat you alive, you might want to listen." I didn't know why I stayed on the line, but I did. And that decision changed everything. I didn't recognize the name Marianne Hale, but the way she said it made it sound like I should. Like she was already a chapter in a book I hadn't opened yet. "I'm not in the mood for games," I told her, staring out at the river. "If this is about Lena, I'm hanging up." "It's not," she said. At least not directly. Her voice was steady, warm, but not soft. The kind of voice that didn't rush to fill silence. "I saw you yesterday," she continued. "In the parking lot." That made my stomach tighten. "I was in my car," she added calmly. "Across the street. I wasn't spying. Just observing." I should have hung up. Any sane person would have. Instead, I asked the question that had been clawing at me since morning. "Why call me?" Another pause. Longer this time. "Because you look like someone who's about to let this town define him," she said. "And because I've seen what happens when people don't intervene." We agreed to meet. I don't know why. Maybe because everything already felt ruined, and one more bad decision didn't seem like it would matter. She suggested Harlow's Cafe, the one place in Cedar Falls that pretended it wasn't stuck in the past. Exposed brick, indie music, overpriced coffee. I arrived early and took a seat near the window, half expecting Lena to walk in instead. She didn't. Marianne did. She was taller than I expected. Mid-30s, if I had to guess. Dark hair pulled back loosely, a few strands already slipping free. No heavy makeup. No need for it. She wore confidence the way other people wore cologne. Subtle, but impossible to ignore. She smiled when she saw me. Not flirtatious. Assessing. "Thank you for coming," she said, sitting across from me. Up close, I noticed her eyes. Sharp. Kind, but not naive. We ordered coffee. Black for her. Too much sugar for me. "I'm not here to offer sympathy," she said once the waitress left. You'll get enough of that whether you want it or not. Then why are you here? I asked. She leaned back slightly. Because Lena isn't the first person to make a fool of someone in this town. And Derek Collins won't be the last to walk away untouched. My jaw tightened at his name. I know Derek, she continued. Professionally. Briefly. Long enough to know his pattern. I didn't interrupt. He moves into towns like this, she said. Finds someone younger. Someone settled. Someone with something to lose. Then he leaves when it gets complicated. And Lena? I asked. Marianne met my eyes. Lena made her own choices. But that doesn't mean you have to carry all the consequences. I laughed again quietly. So what? You're offering me revenge? Her smile was slow. Controlled. No, she said. I'm offering you perspective. And options. We talked for over an hour. About Cedar Falls. About how quickly narratives form. About how men are expected to take betrayal quietly and move on. She didn't ask for details. She didn't push. She listened in a way that made me forget to be defensive. When we stood to leave, she hesitated. For what it's worth, she said, none of this says anything about your worth. But what you do next will. I watched her walk out before me. I told myself that was the end of it. I was wrong. I tried to go back to normal after that. Whatever normal meant now. For a few days, I focused on work. Long shifts. Overtime I didn't need. Anything to keep my mind occupied. Cedar Falls manufacturing had a way of dulling thought if you let it. Conveyor belts. Routine. Noise. It didn't work. Every break, someone asked how I was doing. Every answer sounded like a lie. I could feel my identity shrinking, becoming a footnote in someone else's story. The town didn't help. Lena moved fast. Faster than I expected. By the end of the week, Derek's truck was parked openly outside her place. No more hiding. No more pretending. It felt intentional, like she wanted me to see it. Or maybe she just didn't care anymore. That stung more than I wanted to admit. I ran into Marianne again 3 days later. Not planned. Or maybe planned by her. I still don't know. I was at Harlow's cafe, same seat by the window. It had become my escape. Neutral ground. She walked in, scanned the room once, and smiled when she saw me. You look worse, she said, sitting down without asking. Good to see you too. She laughed softly. Progress, then. This time, the conversation felt different. Less guarded. She told me more about herself. She was 34. Moved to Cedar Falls 2 years earlier after a messy divorce that taught her a lot about power dynamics and reputations in small towns. I learned something important, she said, stirring her coffee. People don't remember truth. They remember confidence. That stuck with me. We started meeting like that. Coffee. Short walks. Sometimes just sitting in silence. There was no rush. No pressure. And somehow, that made it more intense. She never badmouthed Lena. Never encouraged anger. Instead, she asked questions that made me uncomfortable in the right way. What do you want people to think when they say your name? What would it look like if you didn't lose this breakup? One evening, after we'd been talking for weeks, she invited me to her place. Not like that. At least not at first. It was a small house near the edge of town. Clean. Thoughtful. Books everywhere. It felt like a space designed by someone who knew herself. We opened a bottle of wine. Talk turned slower. More personal. She didn't touch me right away. When she finally did, it was brief. Intentional. Like punctuation at the end of a sentence. You're angry, she said quietly. And you should be. But anger alone won't protect you. I asked her what would. She met my eyes. Held them. Strategy. That was the first time revenge became more than a fantasy. Not yelling. Not confrontation. Something quieter. Something smarter. Marianne didn't frame it as payback. She framed it as balance. Lena chose Derek because he looked powerful, she said. Untouchable. Let's see how long that illusion lasts. My heart was racing. Not with lust. With possibility. I realized then that whatever was forming between us wasn't just attraction. It was alignment. And once that happens, things move quickly, whether you're ready or not. I tried to go back to normal after that. Whatever normal meant now. For a few days, I focused on work. Long shifts. Overtime I didn't need. Anything to keep my mind occupied. Cedar Falls manufacturing had a way of dulling thought if you let it. Conveyor belts. Routine. Noise. It didn't work. Every break, someone asked how I was doing. Every answer sounded like a lie. I could feel my identity shrinking, becoming a footnote in someone else's story. The town didn't help. Lena moved fast. Faster than I expected. By the end of the week, Derek's truck was parked openly outside her place. No more hiding. No more pretending. It felt intentional, like she wanted me to see it. Or maybe she just didn't care anymore. That stung more than I wanted to admit. I ran into Marianne again 3 days later. Not planned. Or maybe planned by her. I still don't know. I was at Harlow's cafe, same seat by the window. It had become my escape. Neutral ground. She walked in, scanned the room once, and smiled when she saw me. "You look worse," she said, sitting down without asking. "Good to see you too." She laughed softly. Progress, then. This time, the conversation felt different. Less guarded. She told me more about herself. She was 34. Moved to Cedar Falls 2 years earlier after a messy divorce that taught her a lot about power dynamics and reputations in small towns. "I learned something important," she said, stirring her coffee. "People don't remember truth. They remember confidence." That stuck with me. We started meeting like that. Coffee, short walks, sometimes just sitting in silence. There was no rush, no pressure, and somehow, that made it more intense. She never badmouthed Lena, never encouraged anger. Instead, she asked questions that made me uncomfortable in the right way. What do you want people to think when they say your name? What would it look like if you didn't lose this breakup? One evening, after we'd been talking for weeks, she invited me to her place. Not like that. At least not at first. It was a small house near the edge of town. Clean. Thoughtful. Books everywhere. It felt like a space designed by someone who knew herself. We opened a bottle of wine. Talk turned slower. More personal. She didn't touch me right away. When she finally did, it was brief. Intentional. Like punctuation at the end of a sentence. "You're angry," she said quietly. "And you should be. But anger alone won't protect you." I asked her what would. She met my eyes. Held them. Strategy. That was the first time revenge became more than a fantasy. Not yelling. Not confrontation. Something quieter. Something smarter. Marianne didn't frame it as payback. She framed it as balance. "Lena chose Derek because he looked powerful," she said. "Untouchable. Let's see how long that illusion lasts." My heart was racing. Not with lust. With possibility. I realized then that whatever was forming between us wasn't just attraction. It was alignment. And once that happens, things move quickly, whether you're ready or not. I didn't ask Marianne what she meant by strategy right away. Part of me was afraid that if I named it, it would become real. Irreversible. The kind of thing you can't walk back from once the first step is taken. But the idea stayed with me. Every time I saw Derek's truck. Every time someone mentioned Lena's name like it was a weather update. Casual. Inevitable. Marianne and I grew closer in ways that didn't announce themselves. No grand gestures. No dramatic moments. Just consistency. She remembered things I said in passing. She noticed when my mood shifted before I did. One night, we were sitting on her back porch, the town quiet in that way only small places get after 10. Fireflies flickered near the tree line. She handed me a glass of whiskey and said, almost casually, "Derek is leaving." I looked at her. "Leaving? Transfer," she clarified. "Or at least he thinks so. There's a promotion he's been chasing. Regional manager. Would take him 2 states over." That was the first time I understood the scope of what she knew. "How do you know that?" I asked. She didn't answer directly. People talk when they think they're impressive. She explained it slowly. Derek's image was everything. He wanted to be seen as successful, desirable, in control. The affair with Lena wasn't about love. It was validation. If he leaves now, she continued, he wins. He gets the girl, the job, and no consequences. And you're the footnote. I clenched my jaw. She was right. "So what's the plan?" I asked. She smiled, just slightly. "We don't stop him. We let him expose himself." Over the next week, she coached me. Not on how to act angry, but on how to act unaffected. I showed up places. Calm. Polite. Unbothered. I spoke highly of Lena when asked. Never defensive. It confused people, including her. Then Marianne started moving pieces I didn't even see. Casual conversations. Well-placed comments. Nothing false. Just incomplete truths arranged carefully. She never lied. She didn't have to. Derek started noticing me noticing him, or rather, not noticing him at all. That bothered him more than confrontation ever could. The tension shifted. Meanwhile, what was happening between Marianne and me deepened. One night, after a long conversation about mistakes and second chances, she kissed me. Slow. Deliberate. No rush. It wasn't desperate. It was chosen. The age difference didn't feel like a gap. It felt like balance. She knew herself. She knew what she wanted. And she didn't pretend otherwise. I won't replace her, she told me afterward. That's not my role. I believed her. By the time Derek's promotion interview came up, the town was already buzzing with a different narrative. Subtle. Untraceable. People started wondering if Derek was reliable. And Lena? She started calling me again. That's when I knew it was working. Not because I was still hurt, though I was, but because Marianne had warned me about timing. Silence, she said, is a message people can't control. The calls turned into texts. Short at first, then longer, then emotional. I miss you. We need to talk. I made a mistake and I think you know that. I showed them to Marianne. She read each one without expression, then handed the phone back to me. Don't respond, she said. Not yet. Derek, on the other hand, started acting strange. He lingered when I was around. Tried too hard to look relaxed. Once, at O'Malley's bar, he even bought me a drink I didn't ask for. Small town, he said, raising his glass. No hard feelings, right? I smiled. Took the drink. Said nothing. That unsettled him. A few days later, Marianne told me Derek's promotion interview hadn't gone as expected. Nothing concrete. Just hesitation on their end. Questions about his stability. His reputation. Where would they get those ideas? I asked. She shrugged. From him. The plan was never to destroy him. Just to remove the mask. Lena showed up at my place unannounced one evening. I opened the door because I was tired of being afraid of my own past. She looked smaller than I remembered. Less certain. He's different now, she said almost immediately. Derek. He's stressed. Distant. I waited. I think I rushed into things, she continued. I didn't mean to hurt you. That was the moment I understood something important. She wasn't sorry about the betrayal. She was scared the new story wasn't going the way she'd imagined. I'm seeing someone, I said calmly. Her eyes flicked up. Who? Someone who knows exactly who she is. That was all. She left shortly after. No screaming. No closure. Just confusion. Later that night, Marianne and I sat in her living room, the lights low. She leaned her head against my shoulder. It felt natural. Earned. You did well, she said quietly. I didn't do anything, I replied. She smiled. Exactly. The fallout came faster than I expected. Derek's promotion was officially postponed. Rumors spread that he'd be transferring, not upward, but laterally. A quiet demotion disguised as opportunity. He left Cedar Falls 2 weeks later. Lena stayed. But the town saw her differently now. Not cruelly. Just clearly. As for Marianne and me, there was no announcement. No labels. Just two people choosing each other, day by day. I didn't win her. I didn't steal her. We met where we were and decided not to look away. Revenge, I learned, doesn't always feel like victory. Sometimes it feels like peace. That's the only way I can describe it. Like the town itself had been holding its breath, waiting to see how the story would end. When he drove out, suitcase in the back of his truck, people stopped whispering and started moving on to the next piece of gossip. Except Lena didn't. I saw her more often after that. At the grocery store. At the gas station. At Harlow's Cafe. Always at a different table. Always pretending she hadn't chosen that seat on purpose. She looked at me like I was a question she hadn't prepared for. Marianne noticed, of course. She noticed everything. She's losing control of the narrative, Marianne said one evening as we walked along the river. That's hard for people like her. I asked what she meant. She thought the story would be simple, Marianne explained. She leaves you. Upgrades. Moves on. Instead, she's stuck in the same town, watching you become fine. That word stuck with me. Fine. I was more than fine. I was different. Calmer. Less reactive. Marianne had a way of grounding me without dulling me. Our relationship shifted subtly. Still private. Still intentional. But warmer. Closer. There were nights I stayed over. Mornings we shared coffee without needing to talk. The age difference never came up. Not in the way people expect. If anything, it worked in our favor. She didn't play games. She didn't test me. She didn't need reassurance every 5 minutes. One afternoon, Lena cornered me in the parking lot outside Miller's Grocery, the same place where it had all started. Are you really happy? She asked. It wasn't accusation. It was desperation. I considered lying. It would have been easy, but I didn't. I'm at peace, I said. She flinched like I'd slapped her. I didn't think you'd move on this fast, she said quietly. I almost laughed. Almost. That night, Marianne and I talked about boundaries, about the future, about whether what we were doing had an expiration date. I don't want to be your rebellion, she said, or your revenge. You're not, I replied. You're my choice. She studied me for a long moment, then nodded. The town adjusted, as it always does. I stopped being the guy who got cheated on. I became the guy who handled it well. That reputation matters more than people admit. Lena eventually stopped trying to talk to me. I heard she was planning to move to a bigger city. Start over. Good for her. As for Marianne and me, we didn't rush to define things. But we didn't hide either. When people asked, we didn't explain. We didn't need to. Looking back, I realized the revenge was never about hurting Lena. It was about reclaiming myself. And sometimes, the most powerful move you can make is choosing a better story than the one someone tried to write for you. They imagine confrontation, screaming matches, public humiliation. But the truth is, the most effective kind doesn't announce itself at all. It settles in quietly, changes the balance, and leaves everyone else trying to explain why things feel different. That's what happened in Cedar Falls. By late summer, the story had shifted again. Derek was gone. Lena was packing. And Marianne and I had stopped pretending what we were doing was temporary. We still moved carefully. Not because we were hiding, but because neither of us needed the town's approval. What mattered was how we treated each other behind closed doors. One night, sitting on her porch with the air heavy and warm, Marianne asked me a question I hadn't expected. If Lena had never cheated, she said, would you still be with her? I thought about it longer than I wanted to admit. Yes, I said finally. And that scares me. She nodded, like she'd expected that answer. That's not weakness, she said. That's loyalty. You just gave it to the wrong person first. Around that time, I started noticing how people treated Marianne. With respect. Sometimes even deference. She wasn't loud. She wasn't flashy. But she had influence. Not power over people, clarity. And clarity unsettles those who rely on confusion. Lena came to see her once. I wasn't there. Marianne told me afterward, calmly, like it was just another meeting. She wanted to understand why you changed, Marianne said. I told her you didn't. You just stopped shrinking. That was the last direct connection to my old life. The final piece fell into place quietly. Derek's transfer turned into a resignation. I heard through Evan that things hadn't worked out wherever he landed next. No drama, just a pattern repeating itself somewhere else. Marianne never celebrated that. Neither did I. By fall, Cedar Falls felt different to me. Not smaller, just clearer. I knew where I stood. I knew who saw me and who didn't. Marianne and I talked about the future, not in grand plans, but in alignment. What we wanted, what we refused to repeat. One evening, as we cooked dinner together, she said, you know this won't always be easy. I know, I said, but it'll be honest. She smiled at that. Sometimes I think about Lena. Not with anger, not with longing, just curiosity. About the version of myself I almost stayed stuck being. If there's one thing I learned, it's this: betrayal doesn't end you. It introduces you to yourself, if you let it. And sometimes, the person who helps you rebuild isn't the one who saves you. It's the one who refuses to lie to you. By the time winter started creeping into Cedar Falls, I realized something had shifted permanently. Not just in my life, but in me. The town slowed the way it always does when the days get shorter. Fewer people lingered outside. Conversations stayed practical, safe. But inside Marianne's house, things felt steady, intentional, warm in a way that had nothing to do with the heater. We didn't talk about love much. Not because it wasn't there, but because we respected it enough not to cheapen it with repetition. One evening, Evan asked me point blank, are you serious about her? I didn't hesitate. Yes. That surprised him. It surprised me too. Marianne never asked me to choose her over my past. She didn't compete with Lena's memory. She didn't try to rewrite my history. She just stood beside me while I learned how to carry it without letting it crush me. Lena left town in November. No goodbye, no message, just an empty apartment and a forwarding address someone mentioned in passing. I felt nothing, and that told me everything I needed to know. The final echo of the revenge arrived in a way I didn't expect. I ran into Derek's former supervisor at a company mixer in a nearby city, someone Marianne had introduced me to months earlier. Over drinks, he mentioned Derek casually. Talented guy, he said, but unreliable, always chasing something instead of building it. I nodded, said nothing. That reputation would follow Derek far longer than any affair ever could. Marianne and I talked about moving. Not urgently, not dramatically, just as an option. Cedar Falls had been the setting, but it didn't have to be the ending. One night, lying beside her, I asked the question I'd been holding back. Do you ever feel like this started in the wrong way? I asked, out of someone else's mess. She turned toward me, thoughtful, unoffended. Some things start in chaos, she said. That doesn't mean they're built on it. That answer stayed with me. I understood then that what she gave me wasn't escape. It was perspective. She didn't rescue me from betrayal. She showed me how to stand upright inside it. If Lena had stayed loyal, I would have stayed small, comfortable, unquestioning. Betrayal forced movement, and Marianne gave it direction. People think revenge is about settling scores. For me, it was about refusing to stay the same person who was easy to hurt. When winter finally set in, Cedar Falls disappeared under snow. Clean, quiet, like a reset button. I didn't need closure anymore. I had clarity. Not lighter, not untouched, just present. Marianne and I sat on her porch, bundled in blankets, watching the snow cover the streets of Cedar Falls. The town that had once felt so small now seemed quiet, observant, as if it too had learned a lesson about appearances. I realized how far I'd come. From the parking lot that morning, watching Lena and Derek, to this, sitting next to someone I respected, someone who had taught me patience, strategy, and self-worth. Someone who wasn't rushing me, but whose presence made me better. We didn't talk about the past much. It didn't need it. Lena and Derek existed as echoes now, minor disturbances in a life I had reclaimed. The revenge wasn't explosive. It didn't need to be. It was subtle, precise, and lasting. The kind that leaves people shaken quietly, without any visible fight. You've changed, Marianne said softly. And not just in the way you act. You've grown. I laughed a little, warmth creeping into my chest. I had good teachers. She nudged me playfully. I didn't teach you everything. And she hadn't. She gave me tools. Perspective. Confidence. The freedom to define my own story. Cedar Falls still whispered. People still noticed things. But they no longer defined me. I was no longer the guy everyone felt sorry for, or the guy who got played. I was someone who moved deliberately, with eyes open and heart steady. Lena eventually left town, as I'd suspected she would. Derek's reputation followed him to another state. Neither of them became stories I obsessed over. They were chapters I'd read, learned from, and closed. Marianne stayed. Quietly. Consistently. A steady presence that didn't demand gratitude, but deserved it. We didn't define the relationship in dramatic terms. Not at first. But there was understanding. Trust. A subtle passion that didn't consume, but sustained. Something rare in a world that rewards chaos and punishes restraint. I thought back to that first sight of betrayal in the grocery parking lot. The humiliation, the hurt, the rage. It had been overwhelming, almost unbearable. But it led me here. To someone older, wiser, grounded. Someone who didn't swoop in to rescue, but walked beside me as I found my own footing. And in that, there was a kind of justice far stronger than the drama of revenge. We had never shouted, never humiliated, never exposed. The revenge was in subtlety, in letting consequences unfold naturally, in staying composed while others faltered, in reclaiming dignity instead of chasing vengeance. That winter evening, with snow settling softly around us, I realized something simple. Betrayal doesn't define you. Your response does. And when you choose growth, patience, and deliberate action, the quiet victories feel louder than any public spectacle. I took a sip of my coffee, watching Marianne's eyes reflect the soft white glow of the snow. I think we did okay, I said. We did more than okay, she replied. We did right by ourselves. And for the first time since that morning in the parking lot, I believed it. Life in Cedar Falls didn't stop being small, but I no longer felt small in it. Betrayal had been the trigger. Marianne had been the guide. And I, finally, was the man I wanted to be. Quiet, present, in control, and for once free.